What have we had since the COVID? You know, how what we still talk about COVID, but for a week or two, when we had quote mostly peaceful protests, I called them riots. There's another word for that too. If you look at the organization behind those riots, you could call it insurrection. I mean, after all, we have a new country formed in the middle of Seattle. These are the kinds of things, and there's some connections behind that. And Mark's going to talk about those tonight. And I just want to know if I've used up 2 minutes yet.
No, not yet. We just wait. Yes, I think we are. Are we on or not?
Let's go.
You are live.
Live.
All right. Hello and welcome to everybody across the country. This is Rob Rohrbaugh. We're here at the Garden Cafe in Omaha, Nebraska, getting ready to hear some very fascinating details of what's going on in the scene today, especially regarding the world situation, the United States position in it, and the attacks we're under, both internal and external. I think that's all I need to say. Is there any instructions I need to give? Okay, I have an excuse. So let me help me welcome Dr. Mark Christian.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Rob, and happy birthday. Thank you all for coming today, and sorry, thanks for your patience with me, and thanks for attending. It seems like we have a good crowd today, very, very close to one of Biden rallies, right? This is very close to what rally for Biden looks like, you know? So.
No, he only had 3.
I agree, yes. Today we have lots of things we're gonna be talking about today, and the current status of the country is really in a dire situation. And I want to start off the bat and say that I do not expect things to get any better until the day of the election. I want to ask you, how many of you knows how many days left in the day of the election?
131.
131. Anybody else knows the number? We should, all of us know that number, and it's right. 131 is the right number. 131 days till the day of the election. I think each one of us needs to know exactly how many days are left, and they should put an agenda for themselves, what they need to do so they can vote for this country and fight for it. You know, I look at the day of the election is a very interesting and very important day. You know, many generations and many people say this is the upcoming election is the most important election. I think this is not just a regular election is coming up. I think this is the level of civil war kind of situation is about to come. I think it is deciding between what America has been and what America has, is today to what America that people wants it to be. And it is a very big difference between the two. And I think we need to fight, big fight to keep this country the way it is. And it has been a force for good for many, many years. One of the things that the left are threatening right now is saying that, you know, if Trump wins again, we can have a civil war in our hands. And then I thought about it for a little bit, and I thought, you know what? I think it's not that bad. You know, what kind of weapons the left has to fight and what the right has. I think this is going to be a very easy war to win, civil war. I don't call it, I don't pray it for this country, but I think what they are doing right now is exactly a civil war. And they have been exploiting everything that is going on in the nation for their own agenda. And when I look at bringing down statues and bringing down things like this, it's not serving anybody's good or serving any kind of justice whatsoever. Okay. So today, before I get started, last month I asked about how many of you have been, touched by the coronavirus, unfortunately, or so. So do you know anybody or anybody of your family members has been, touched by the virus? Yeah. And is it somebody close or?
The sister of a good friend of mine, whose sister just passed away a few days ago.
Oh, from the COVID. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry about
The
that.
underlying is
Okay. And it was diagnosed, confirmed diagnosis, and okay, I'm really sorry about to hear that. Anybody else? You have? Co-worker? And they're okay or?
Yeah. They all. The funny thing was, everything, we
off of the phone. He tried to do it.
Okay.
So I didn't do it. That's another.
And you went to business and went to work and everything. Yeah.
No, for both at school.
Oh, okay.
So we didn't have to be there, but we went there for a reason. We kept their distance like this. And she called me that night and said, no, I have sore throat. I'm gonna go. So she tested negative.
Okay.
So then she called me and said it was negative. Well, then her husband and kids all got sick. He had it. She got a second test and she had it.
And they are over it right now.
And they're over it.
How long did it take them to get over it?
You know, not very long. She actually, it was like she was sick that night and she was fine the next day.
Okay.
And the husband, I think, was sick the next day. So they went to the hospital, everybody had mild symptoms. They were all healthy people in their group.
Okay. And you know, you hear those stories all the time. If you don't mind, Vicky actually got the news that her father, who was 95 years old, got tested positive for COVID last weekend, and on Father's Day, you know, but he went to the hospital on Father's Day, right? And how is he doing now? Wow, praise God. So it's what, 4 or 5 days, right? Yeah. You have one somebody?
Yeah, my daughter, her mom, and her significant other, they were both really bad for about 2 months. And so now about the past 2 weeks, they've been okay.
So they get over it?
Yeah.
Okay. This is your daughter?
Yeah, my daughter's mother
Okay.
and her boyfriend.
Oh, boy. Okay. But they're fine right now, right?
Yeah, it took about 2 months because they were really bad.
Okay. So the virus is real, as we can all hear. There is people died, unfortunately. There is people get over it. 95 years old, praise God. Hopefully we'll get over it. You know, we don't want to jinx anything. But it is a real thing. But at the same time, we can recognize and realize very easily that it was not something that we should have destroyed the country for, or destroyed the economy for, or shut down the way it is. And it has a political agenda behind it. I'm not saying that anybody created the virus, but obviously there is enemies out there who are waiting to exploit anything that is going on for their own agenda and so forth, right? So we continue praying for those to be saved and to continue to recover, but we have to realize that, you know, there is bigger agendas behind that as well. One other thing that's going on in the country since we met last time is all of a sudden we have this racial injustice going on in the country, and the seriousness of systemic racism and all that kind of stuff is going on in the country. And I hope that nobody in the crowd over here today feels that they are guilty because they are white. Anybody is like that, feeling like that? Because we need to have a talk, right? No, nobody? That's great. So I do not believe for a second that anybody needs to be feeling guilty because of their color of their skin, whether they are black or white or in between, or yellow or brown or anybody else. This is racist by itself, right? I think we should feel guilty for our sin if we committed a sin against God. We need to be on our knees, not to our brothers and sisters who are people of color, but to be on our knees to God, who can save us and forgive us for our sins. Do we need to do some work to correct our problems and so forth? Absolutely. But to continue, it hurts me the most the other day, like 2 weeks ago. It was not enough that we are sitting doing church from home. And one of the statements that Trump said lately, he sometimes says some stuff that is very profound, which is very interesting, right? To get some as a surprise, that he said that they want to praise the people who are burning down the church, but arrest those who go to church. Isn't that very interesting? I think that was a very interesting statement they made at the rally last time. It is so true. It is so sad that it's so true. They want to arrest people who go to church, but people who burn it down, they're okay with it. That's very weird. But this is not what hurt me the most. 2 weeks ago, on a Sunday, we are sitting down doing church and trying to do it from home because we are under home arrest, everybody, and we're not supposed to go to church, otherwise we'll be arrested. And then I moved from one church service to another, trying to find a message that talks about Jesus, because this is why I'm turning to church. And every one of those services talking about one thing, the gospel of Martin Luther King, what we are not supposed to do and how we're supposed to bow down and so forth. And one of the things that hurts me the most, a church in Nebraska, and one of the mega churches in Nebraska, on stage from the pulpit, a young woman comes in and talk about the message and how hard it is and trying to appease as much as she can. And one of the statements that she made says, I want to bow down on my knees in front of my black brothers for forgiveness. And I said, who on his right mind approved this statement to come out of the Prophet? This is wrong in many, many ways. This is not what people turning for church for. I think the church supposed everybody should realize that we should get on our knees for one person only, and this is Jesus Christ. Nobody gets on their knees for anything else. This is not our faith. This is not our country. This is nothing from what we should believe in whatsoever. Okay. Do we have problems from the past? Yes, we do. And the seriousness of it? Yes. But I think, one person comes to mind by name of Barack Obama. Not because he became a president. This guy actually grew up in America. He was using drugs when he was a kid by his own admission. And he lived in California. He lived in Chicago. He lived in New York. He was able to go to school and then from colleges. And then he was able to rise all the way to become the president of the United States of America. Don't you think a man like this should be today coming out to the African American community and to the country altogether and says, how did he do it? How did he was able to overcome the systemic racial problems in America and the fight in America? And yet he's not doing any of that. He's throwing more gas and more gasoline and more fire and dividing the country more and more, because it has nothing to do whatsoever of erasing the problems of the past. It's for political agendas. Mr. Floyd died in a horrific way. Many of us have watched the video, and nobody can condone that whatsoever. All of us will hear that happens. But to exploit it the way they are doing it, I don't know how actually bringing down statues or burning down cities and creating damage. I just heard today in the morning that there was more than $1 million damage downtown in Lincoln, Nebraska. I had no idea why this is going to bring any justice. I don't think it's going to bring any justice whatsoever to anybody. This is not the way to go about it. And to feel guilty and to try to be on our knees and to try to appease and try to all of that stuff, it never works, and it will never work. I think it's about time for LeBron James with his billions of dollars, and Jay-Z with his billions of dollars, and Beyonce with her billions of dollars, and with Obama with his platform and millions of dollars. They are not supposed to come and heal our country instead of pointing fingers at the white. What did you do for your own community before you point at me and say, what did you do? Don't you think this is a question we should ask? But the problem is not racial divide and so forth. If you pay attention, when did the Black Lives Matter start? Any of you knows? Long time ago? Black Lives Matter. When did they form the movement? Right after Zimmerman, right after George Zimmerman, and then it formed at that time, and then quickly afterwards they started, manifesting themselves during Ferguson. Okay, if you look at the calendar of all of those events, it's very interesting, and it's worth asking why all of a sudden videos comes from police brutality and injustice and Black Lives Matter movement and cities burning down. They always happen in the year of the election. Does it like the police stops brutality right, in the middle of the cycle, and then it's in 2008, in 2012, in 2016, and 2020. Usually the incidents kind of hype up and increase, and all of a sudden they become a serious issue. Did we hear about Black Lives Matter in March or in February? There was like, we just kidding about the virus at that time, don't you think? And all of a sudden videos start popping up and things like this. I'm not over here in a conspiracy. I don't know why it's happening, but I have to observe this and ask the questions. I have to ask the question, why it is always happening during the election and why all of a sudden exploiting it. My suspicion is that some of that happens on a regular basis away, but it all of a sudden comes to the surface during the election so they can use it for their own good. So that means one thing. They don't care about people who are dying. They don't care about people who get shot. They don't care about brutality. They don't care about all of that stuff. They care about the agenda. Problems happens. Viruses happens. Pandemics happens. Everything happens all the time. Just pointing out to it so they can use it for an agenda or for exploiting it to further an agenda and a goal. Can you see that? right? This is not a simple issue. And one of the other things that I wanted to pay attention to as well, you know, when we look at the Islamic agenda and the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamists all together, and now I'm going to be bold enough to say today that I don't believe that each one of you, and even people online and people in America, understand the magnitude and the level of the strength of the Islamist movement that has been in existence for the 1400 years. Many of you look at Islamic problem as how they are changing the culture, or a terrorist attack that took place on 9/11, or a shooting that took place in Florida, or somebody says, you know, they are changing the message in our churches and so forth. And all of those are true, but it does not give you the exact magnitude of the Islamic movement. And I'm here to tell you that the Islamic movement is way bigger and stronger than any of you actually understand. And I'm coming from this background. I'm coming from Egypt. I'm coming from an Islam background. And I understand how bad it is. You know, we're writing the book, and hopefully, you know, it will come very soon, and you will understand what the level of the Islamic movement altogether for the last 1400 years. And the Islamist movement is a very well-funded movement. They know exactly what their agenda is about. They are fighting every day. They are moving from one generation to another generation, and they fight for it until they die, and then they turn the baton to the next generation to continue the fight every day. It has been going on for 1400 years. They have dealt with every leader. They have no problem whatsoever to deal with the Democrats. They have no problem whatsoever to deal with the communists. They have no problem whatsoever to deal with the socialists. They have no problem whatsoever to deal with Churchill, because they did. They have no problem whatsoever to deal with Hitler, because they did. They don't care if they're going to work with the Chinese or the Russians. They will work with everybody, exploit everybody so they can further their own agenda. This is how dedicated they are, and this is how devious they are. And many people don't understand the magnitude of that movement and what is their agenda. And they have never received such a defeat like nowadays. The Islamic movement have been receiving defeats like have never been before in many years before that, because of this current administration. The defeat that is taking place, I can give you examples. In Saudi Arabia, a country that is kind of the most wealthy and most influential and the place for the holy sites of Islam and so forth, since 1979, they turned to a very strong Islamic movement, even more than before, and they were been funding Islamic movement and getting all the money and so forth. When Trump came into office, Saudi Arabia is changing, and literally they're saying this. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia says that I'm changing the country to before 1979, more open and so forth. Do you think the Islamic movement likes that? They hate the guts of this. They want to change that. When they look at Israel and what's happening in Israel, and when you look at, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel today, announced by the United States president. When they look at the Golan Heights has been a part of Israel for good, announced by the United States government, then all of that stuff is a defeat. When they look at Egypt, the changing and jailing the Muslim Brotherhood and putting them under the ground. When they see the Muslim Brotherhood is defeated and try to fight them and put them in jail everywhere, the Islamist movement is hurting and hurting so bad. And do you think they're going to go down silently? No, they won't. They will fight back. Why I'm mentioning the Muslim Brotherhood altogether and the Islamic movement? Because if you look at the Black Lives Matter and the relationship between them and the Islamic movement is so strong and so tight. I have those papers in the morning. Do you have them, Vicky? You need to look at this before we leave today, when you are leaving today. You have to look at this article that is published on the website of the Islamic Society of North America and other Islamic groups. And it talks about the necessity, and this is back in 2000, and what the year is it? 2012? No, I think 2015 or so. It's okay. You can look at this website, and you can take a picture of this before you leave today, and you will see. It's a very interesting. The enemy is not hiding their agenda. They are talking about it openly. So in this article, you will look at the presidents displayed in the front page. And who are they? You have Biden, God forbid he will be a president, and you have Obama, you have the Bushes, you have Clinton, all of them right in the picture, right? Right, Vicky? Okay. And they are talking about the support of the Black Lives Matter. They say it's a duty of every Muslim that they have to support the Black Lives Matter. And then they are pointing the number of leaders from Sarsour to others about how they are hosting events, supporting each other, raising funds, open mosques, open stages for the Black Lives Matter. Because the Black Lives Matter is not about blacks or the life of the blacks. It's about destroying this country and bringing it on its knees. How do I know that? Because they say so. They actually just said that. So I'm not over here trying to push a conspiracy. They say that. They say if we are not going to change the country, we'll burn it down. They said that we are Marxists. In their opinion, being Marxist, or they don't care about that, by the way. The idea is to bring America on its knees. That's the whole idea of the Black Lives Matter. Because you can ask them, what is that to do when you're feeling guilty? How I'm going to bring Floyd back to life? Or how I'm going to save Floyd? How I'm going to do this? I'm going to do that? Nothing. It's not helping anything. 4 years ago, while I was in Texas and I was speaking at an event, and I talked about, at that time, Black Lives Matter was just starting. And I was talking and I made a prophecy, and I'm so sad that I did that, because at that event, I talked about the main purpose of Black Lives Matter is to make a nationalized police force. And they asked me why they do that. And I said, because dictatorship succeed by two arms. One of them is media propaganda machine, and the other thing is a nationalized police. In America and other places, you cannot get the military to be on the streets on a regular basis. Even in countries like corrupt like Egypt, they cannot put the police on the military on the streets all the time. They have to have a police that is actually a military force for a dictatorship. So to have a dictatorship in this country, and it doesn't mean a dictatorship that you're going to have Hitler and yelling and doing stuff. Dictatorship means what is going on today. That they're going to censor everybody, that you cannot talk about things, you're going to lose your business, you're going to close your business, they're going to attack you in your livelihood, they're going to push taxes, they can put things on you, they take your guns, all of the things this is dictatorship. This is not freedom. This is not living your life up to your limits and living up to your potential. It's about the government telling you what to do. And they cannot do that without having a nationalized police. So I said that 4 years ago, and that was not even an agenda. And hold on, behold, the Democratic Party and the Black Lives Matter start saying that out front clearly. Yes, the bill is going to be blocked by the Senate, but you know what? Obamacare was the same thing before. They start circulating some ideas when they are not in power, and as soon as they get in power, then at that time, oh, it's a bill, and all of a sudden you have 1,000 pages of bill ready that was popped up in two hours, and then all of a sudden they are passing it, and you're going to have that. Changes does not happen overnight. It happens slowly. And this is what Black Lives Matter is about, bringing this nation on its knees. Destroying this country, destroying the system. They say that. And the Islamist is helping them more than you can even imagine. I would say, and I made this claim, that actually more of 50% of the left agenda is supported or funded or actually to further the goal of the Islamic agenda in the United States. I'm not over here biased and trying to push an idea about Islam. Today, you cannot even say that Black Lives Matter is related to Islam. I will, and I don't care. This is what we need to understand, because they are saying it. I'm not bringing information because I'm just imagining it. The websites of the Muslim Brotherhood is saying it. So we have to learn that, we have to get educated, and we have to learn how to pass the information around and so forth, okay? Do we have any more questions? Do you have any questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just to fill everybody in on how close this is coming to us. You can go to the website for the Douglas County Board and City Council. Last week, the last 2 hours, of the Douglas County Board, the presentation, people who are working the corrections department. It turned out to be about 45 minutes with the propaganda, racial disparity. They started talking a little bit about Black Lives Matter.
Can you?
And the OTOP.
Because we are online, so I have to stay with one statement or two.
OTOP people spent another 45 minutes.
Okay.
They are supported by the city council and the Douglas County Board.
And this is happening in every state. It's not.
OTOP openly supports Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
So
Anybody has a question, or do you have a question online, bro?
Not at this point.
Okay. So moving, do you have any questions about what I shared so far? Am I depressing you? We have a savior, okay? We have a good system. We have to learn about what the problem is going on, okay? We do. And we have to understand what's going on. It doesn't mean that it's the end. It means that we just need to learn how problematic things are, okay? The topic I want to talk about today as well is John Bolton, right? And before I go into John Bolton himself, many of you have been involved in politics for quite some time. I do agree with that, or some of you, okay? And some of you have been, conservative or changed to conservatism, and you are conservative or you identify as a conservative or Republican for one reason or another, because you support one thing or two or many of the things that you think are valuable to you and ideas that you believe in, okay? I found it natural. When I came to the United States, this is how I felt. It fits in with everything. It's not, people ask me, why did you choose Jesus and not Buddhist? And why did you become a conservative and not a Democrat? I didn't choose, this is my nature. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the real God, and there is no real God other than Jesus Christ. Then I am a Christian. It's not because I was joining different clubs. I want to join one. I did not become a conservative Republican because I choose between the two and see which party I'm going to go with and which one is going to help me. None of them is helping me. None of them is doing anything to me. I'm conservative because I agree and believe in those ideas very much, okay? And I did not have much. I did have lots of information about American politics and so forth, but I'm always a learner and always learn. And one of the things I learned back in 2014 and 15, a very interesting, background that I would love to share with you today so you can understand where John Bolton is coming from and what is going on in this country today, okay? So before then, I did not know the history of the Republican Party and the conservative movement and so forth. And I start learning and so forth, and then I get introduced to different groups, and I start learning even more and more depth, okay? And today, do you know that there is two big clubs that actually, like two big groups that host the conservative movement and the Republican Party? Do you know any of that? Like two big groups, backbone of the conservative movement. Do you know that? No, right? Nobody knows that. I didn't know either, so don't feel bad about it, but I do now, right now, so I don't share that with you, so I can educate you today. The other thing is, I think the Republican, not I think, this is what I learned, that the Republican movement and the conservative movement went to a serious change during the Reagan administration. At that time, there was a club that was hosting most of the conservative movement that has been established for years. And this was the kind of the platform or the think tank or the interaction between people where they do things whatsoever from the conservative movement and feed over each other and so forth. Reagan, by his direction, ordered some of his close friends, not ordered, advised some of his friends to build a new club where it will host real conservatives, real Reagan ideas, real American ideas, and that will help the country and further his agenda. Okay, and that did not demolish the old club whatsoever. And there was a little bit of competition between the two. And actually, this competition started way back when Reagan was running for office. And I think he did the only mistake that he did, if he did, or identify with, is that he picked Bush as his VP. Okay, maybe some of you do not agree with me. I'm not over here to make friends. I'm just telling you as it is from the information I know. Okay, and when Bush came into the administration, he did many things that is not aligning with the Reagan administration 100% or Reagan ideology 100%. Why? Because they were coming from two different backgrounds. And one of these clubs is actually like the platform for Bush for many, many years. I'm not talking about virtual clubs. I'm talking about real one, a membership, a funding, a 501c3, enormous amount of money, and so forth. Have you heard about any of this information before?
Not in detail, but I've heard how corrupt.
It's not about corrupt or not. When I say real conservative and so forth, because if you look at the conservative movement since Bush the dad and afterwards, do you see that they really stood up for the pro-life movement that they should? They definitely run on it on different campaigns. But did they do any change that was able to change the Wade case, or did they do anything for the pro-life movement as a president, whether it was Bush, the dad, or the son, or any of them? Did you see any of the changes? Did you see any changes of any of the senators or the congressmen that was elected over the years because they were going to fight for the unborn and so forth? They definitely made amazing speeches. They definitely made very good campaign promises. Did you see anything happening? Did you see anything happening in the Islamic movement from day one? One of the things that Bush the dad did, when I say that he was a very bad choice, that he invited the Mujahideen, the nucleus of the Taliban, into the White House during Reagan administration. Do you agree with that today? And you have to remember that very well, because I'm going to mention it again. Okay, so back in the day when Reagan was in office, Bush the dad, when he was a VP of the United States, he convinced Reagan to sit down with the Mujahideen, the rising Islamic movement, so he can invite them into the White House, and he convinced Reagan that this is good for America because we're going to support the Mujahideen, the Islamic movement, so they will fight the Russians for us in Afghanistan. Would you agree with that today? Do you think, Bush was an idiot when he did that decision? No, he wasn't. He was the head of the CIA, so he understood what he was dealing with before he became the VP. So he was not an idiot. He was not a naive person who didn't know what he was dealing with. He should and must have been knowing exactly what he was dealing with. So when I'm talking about, a club that one real one that believes in real ideals, that wants to make a difference and make a change, another one is fake, this is what I'm talking about. Because the other club that is hosting what you call them, the rhinos or the old Republicans and so forth, is actually existence in real life. They convene with each other and do things with each other. Bush administration, most of the people were from that club. Do you know that name of that? Are you making any assumptions about things? Because those are real clubs. They really exist. Does anybody know anything I'm talking about? Huh? What's that? Henry Kissinger was part of that as well.
Isn't there something called DUMOS?
American Enterprise Institute. American Enterprise Institute is an organization that existed for quite some time, and it is the platform for the fake Republicans. For so long, they have been just to the Republicans. This is where the government officials is picked from, and so forth. Okay, the Reagan Club is the Council of National Policy. You're not going to find lots of information about Council of National Policy online, because they are trying to be discreet as much as they can, because they know that they're under the attack, not from the Democrats, not from the left only, but also from the Republicans who are fake Republicans. Okay, you're following what I'm saying or not?
Yes.
Okay, you're following what I'm saying? Okay. So the American Enterprise Institute has been at it for many, many years, deceiving the electorate in the United States of America by pushing fake conservative ideas and speeches while not following any of it whatsoever. And one of those leaders in the American Enterprise Institute is Mr. John Bolton. Okay, Bush definitely is, Mitt Romney as well, and many others. Okay, so if you look back at John Bolton and his career, he has been part of this organization. If you actually look American Enterprise Institute together with John Bolton's name, and you will see many of the things that happened, under, he made multiple webinars and so forth for them. And he has been working with them for many, many years. So why John Bolton is doing what he's doing today? Because this is part of a movement that has been going on for quite some time. It's not because he was so mad that he was fired. That's part of the truth. But it's not the whole problem. It is not because he wants to go to war and Trump did not want to go to war. It's part of the deal, but not the main deal. The main problem is the American Enterprise Institute wanted to get rid for Trump since 2015. They tried their best. They worked hard. They did everything they can. In March of 2016, when Trump was rising and about to be, nominated, the Enterprise Institute met together in Georgia, in an island in Georgia, and put an event for 3 days, closed door, so they can convene with each other and talk about how they can stop Trump from getting elected. And I'm talking about the top leaders, and John Bolton was part of that group.
So what we're blaming on the Democrats,
Huh?
we're blaming this on the Democrats, but it's really the fake Republicans.
Absolutely, this is, you got it. So actually the fake Republicans and the Democrats are on the same page. On the same page. They are not like two entities. They pretend, and they have been pretending for years to be the two different groups. But the fact of the matter is, they're working with each other, complicit with each other. This is why you will see Bush. What is the difference in the last years between Bush and Clinton's and Obama's? Well, different names, different ideology. We thought we have a Republican, we have a Democrat, but the fact of the matter, they did the same thing. They never did anything for the unborn. They never did anything for religious liberty. They never did anything for, Bush is the one who gave Islam the name that is the religion of peace. It was not Obama. It was not Hillary. It was not Bill Clinton. It was Bush, actually. So the fact is, we are dealing with the fake Republicans as bigger enemy. Because here is the thing, actually, in my opinion. When we are dealing with an enemy that is telling me that he is against me, then we can have debate this in real ideas and fight with each other. But those who are stabbing us in the back and the people who are dealing with deceptions and lies are the worst of enemies, don't you think? And this is what we are dealing with. And the American Enterprise Institute meeting in March of 2016 is not it is a hidden, the agenda is online. I can actually get the agenda and I send you a picture of it, Vicky, so we can put it out to everybody. You need to look at what they have been trying to do since 2016. Do you think they give up their ideas? Some of the Republicans at that meeting changed their mind, just very few. But the majority of them, they did not like it from day one. They don't like it today, and they will do whatever it takes to get Trump administration out. And it's not about Trump as an individual. It's not about how he looks, or because he has an origin skin, or because he has a fake hair, or because of his tweets. All of those attacks, okay? And I don't like Trump because of any of that stuff either. I'm talking about Trump because what he is trying to do and accomplish. He's trying to do, he stands for the unborn. He tries to stand for the religious liberty, for the education, for the immigration, for fighting the Islamic agenda. All of those things is destroying the fake Republicans and the Democrats equally. And this is why they are fighting him hand in hand. You make sense now? So this is what we're dealing with. You have a question?
There are some coming in whenever you're ready.
Okay, I want to finish one thing before we start taking some questions. I have an interaction with Bolton, John Bolton himself. I think he was one of the very first high-profile people I ever met in my life. And I was so amazed that I'm going to go in a meeting and John Bolton is going to be sharing some stuff in a small meeting, the size of this. And we're going to have conversation and I'm going to ask questions. And at that time, I was actually so much invested into the Arab Spring and what's going on and the Syrian problem and so forth. And I have been talking about it for years. Some of you have heard me talking about the Syria and how it's a serious issue, even before it became a serious issue. And even before it became like so public and so popular like this. So I was waiting to go in and talk to John Bolton. I've seen him while I was in Egypt. I've seen him on TV. I've seen him involved in many things. And I always thought that he was in the right place. He's fighting for the country. He's a serious man. He's not going to take any flag, and he's going to fight hard. So I thought I'm going to go to this meeting and I'm going to ask him. So I listen what he has to say, and finally I'm going to have some. This is during Obama administration, by the way. And I thought I'm going to have some fresh air and I'm going to have somebody who's that level. We're going to talk with each other, and I would share with him what I know about Benghazi and so forth. And I sat down in the meeting, and I always sit in the front so I can have as much exposure as much as I can. And the guy started talking, and after 5 minutes, and I said, maybe I'm just not understanding what's going on. And then I listened more. And the guy was not saying anything from what I expected he to say. He was 100% in agreement with Obama and what Obama is trying to do. And I was thinking to myself, am I like crazy, I'm an idiot, I'm not smart enough to understand what he's saying, maybe I'm not getting it. Is that true what he's saying? So I had to ask questions to make sure that I get what I get. This is when I get confused, and then I start asking questions to make sure that I understand, as primitive questions. And he looked at me, he has an ego more than I've ever seen anybody. And I have met very, very high profile people afterwards. This guy has an ego like no tomorrow, really, okay? And he thinks very highly of himself, and I don't know why. And actually, before he started his conversation, he was talking about Bush as God. Like seriously, he was saying about, the joke and the ice breaking. He was talking about him in the beast, in the car, and how he was sitting with Bush and talking with each other, and how he was, in love and adored by Bush. And I said, man up, dude, this is not even a joke. Like, this is not funny. Like, what are you talking about? This is even before he started going into stuff. He loves Bush. He loves the Bush administration. He loves George W. more than you can even, the way he talked about George W. Bush, like it is his God for him. And he is like putting himself down. This guy with this big ego talking about Bush like that. And then when he's talking about the Arab Spring, the overthrowing of government and replacing the Muslim Brotherhood in their place, talking about putting the Muslim Brotherhood in charge of the Middle East, giving the Muslim Brotherhood a platform and a coalition to form the strongest opposition to the United States in history since the inception of the United States, giving the Islamic movement fresh air similar to the fresh air that they got 1400 years ago. You're talking about that stuff and you're supporting it? What kind of a hawk are you? What kind of a conservative Republican are you? And then I asked questions, and it confirmed everything I was hearing. I was not an idiot. He was seriously talking about, similar agenda to Obama. And he's trying to convince everybody in the audience that this is the right way to do. So I went out, as soon as I was leaving out, and there's two leaders that I start talking to. I'm this guy who's coming from Egypt, and the first time attending those meetings. And, and I'm coming out and says, John Bolton is crazy. This is wrong. And the guy looked at me and said, it's like I felt like I'm another idiot, coming, you have no idea coming from Egypt. You don't know anything. I'm sorry for you, kind of. So I left him and I go to another guy and I said, seriously, John Bolton is saying crazy stuff. This is Obama agenda. We should not believe in this. We should not do this. And he said, but John Bolton has an amazing agenda. He's better understanding than you, and so forth. And guess what? Last week, I have to text. And this guy and said, hey, do you remember our conversation? We said, I don't understand things. How does it look like right now, dude? Okay, I tend to do that because I have to say, I told you so. I like that too much. I do it to my son. I do it to everybody around me. Okay, except Vicky. Cannot do that to Vicky. That's the only person I can do that. And I did. And he said, yes, you are right. I can, we had the conversation back and forth. And he said, can you back on the radio? I did the radio today about that. And he mentioned this. And he was not having the ego to say I was wrong. He said, I was wrong with Mark then. And he opened the radio by saying that. So John Bolton was not, I think it is not his problem that he's doing what he's doing today. I think the problem is Trump's problem to start with, that he hired somebody like him. The only excuse them giving Trump administration to hire him and McMaster before him and other people before him is because the bucket that he can choose from is very small. The fake Republicans and the career conservatives and the career American Enterprise Institute that are pretending to be fake, pretending to be hoax, standing for us, are so huge and so big. And the others are afraid what they can do. They cannot do that. They cannot support Trump 100%. They're afraid to work for him. They're afraid to support him because it's going to ruin their career. They don't know what to do. The bucket that he has to choose from is very, very small. That was very clear during the election, during the campaign in 2016. He had like 5-6 people. Anderson Cooper was making fun and says, I was expecting to go in with a guy that is front runner and find 10, 15 people actually around him and so forth. And he found 2 people, one in the swimming pool and one sitting next to him talking about stuff. And that was the whole campaign. You know why Trump succeeded? Because of his message. It's just a very simple, straightforward American message. He doesn't need that kind of entourage, but when he's governing, he needs people to govern with him. He's not going to run the White House and have a chief of staff that believes in and national security and others. And he has very limited amount of people that he can choose from. But even though I think John Bolton was a horrible decision and a horrible hire for the Trump administration. And by the way, if you do remember, You know, I talked over here about when Iran was trying to pull the United States into a war. Do you remember that? Or some of you remember that? And they were actually down the drone for us. You know, Bolton was in there and he wanted to go and all in and fight. And Trump played the game and did not go in a war with Iran. People from outside will look at, you know, John Bolton likes to go to war and destroy our enemies. That's not the truth. The truth is he was tricking Trump to get into a war because his agenda that he swore on from day one during the meeting in 2016 in the island in Georgia, and even when he was working in the office, is to destroy this man that he's working for. So when he was blocked multiple times and finally got the firing, you're fired, then his ego was hurt. And he doesn't care today about anything. He doesn't care about his career. He doesn't care about his future. Even when the judge said that he is liable criminally and civil for his book, he doesn't care. You know what? Because he thinks that, you know, Obama has to win Trump has to win in next November for him to be liable. And he believes that Trump is not going to win and he's going to get away with it. This is what his belief is, that he's going to get the book and nobody's going to hold him accountable for his action. And to make a mockery of the United States and the mockery of the United States presidency and the mockery of the National Security Office. And this is what he's doing by his book. And he's doing this because this is his agenda from day one. Yes, the firing hurt him, but he didn't care. You know, some people say, oh, he's leaving because Trump was trying to invite Taliban to end the war in Afghanistan. Well, it is the American Enterprise Institute that he's part of that advised Reagan to bring Taliban at the height of the war and the beginning of the Islamic movement in Afghanistan. Do you think this man all of a sudden has an epiphany and now he doesn't want the same people in the White House? No. It is just because he doesn't want to see peace. He doesn't want to see Trump agenda succeed. He doesn't want to see that the American troops will be back home. He doesn't want to see this presidency succeed for one day. He wants to trip this presidency in every way they can. And when he failed, now he's trying his best to do it through his book. We're going to take some questions and then we can go back.
Can I ask didn't Trump know what Bolton was before he hired him?
Did Trump know about what Bolton is before he hired him? The question has to be going back into a little bit of depth with. You know what they did to Flynn? Okay, and I talked about that last week, and he's not a hero, but he was at least willing to work with Trump and believe in his agenda. He was not part of the enterprise. He was part of his own problems, but he was not part of that. They stopped Flynn from being his national security. Trump has to, as soon as they do that, you know, you pay attention to the media, they start touting Trump and says, there is no way anybody's going to work for you as a national security. And he said, no, I have a lot of people that is going to work for me because they know, okay? So he was forced to hire Mike Master. He was forced to hire this and this because again, the bucket is so small. He's trying to pick from the best. If he wins, and I pray that we will win in this next election, that things has and must change so we can succeed as a country, because they could continue doing what they are doing. Make sense? You have a
Dr. Martin, John Bolton is a perfect case of someone that illustrates a broader question that we have from the audience. How do we identify these people? Is there a list? And in my perspective, does it change? I can remember one time when I admired John Bolton. I thought he had a lot of insight. It turns out that he's essentially on the wrong side. How do we, as ordinary citizens, identify these people?
How can we identify the people who are not fighting for the United States? Well, it's a very simple thing. You look at the history of somebody and to look at their affiliation and their background. And it doesn't take so much to know that John Bolton was on the island in Georgia. What is the name of the island?
I think Ben Sass was.
Ben Sass was no, it was on Sea Island, Georgia. Okay, and the event was March 3rd to 6th, 2016. And here is the picture of it, the agenda of it. So you can look it up and you can check it up and look at the agenda. How can we identify people? Look at their history. You know, probably you will be one of those people if I come and say, John Bolton does not understand things. And he said, Mark, you know, I think he's just going a little bit too far. It's very easy by two things. I listen to the person, what he has to say, and I look at their background. And that happens with Islam, that happens with anything that you're dealing with in this life. Don't we do that when we have interviews in business? If you have a business, you look at the person and what they are doing. You know, the left is very good in vetting anybody that they want to work with or not. They can go in their Twitter feed 1700 years ago and find one tweet that was not aligning with their agenda and they kick them out. And they are very good in finding any 1700 years, there is no Twitter, but I'm just joking over here, right? So they very good in vetting the person that they work with. And they hold these things against them. So I don't think it is very hard. You know, American Enterprise Institute is not a hidden organization. Some of the stuff that they do is hidden, but it is very easy to, if you want to do the work, you're hiring one for the national security of the United States of America to carry an agenda for the president. It should be a little bit more vetting, but it is for his execution. The guy is going in a non-stop attacks, whether it is Russia, Ukraine, impeachment, virus, Black Lives Matter, and the list goes on and on and on and on. So I am going to find some excuses for him. I hope that things will get and turn better over time. Any more questions?
Dr. Mark.
The follow-up to that, the questioner said she found what she was looking for on the American Enterprise Institute website.
Do you find it?
So perhaps we can list some of those things as resources.
Yes.
Part of it is outing them, identifying groups,
Yes.
and then doing your research.
Yes. You know, I'm going to give you an example actually for the people who have changed hearts. You know Elon Musk, right? Have heard of this guy? You know, the space and the Tesla and stuff like that, right? He was actually on that meeting as well. But the guy actually said, I got the red pill and I have a change of heart. He announced that on the web on Twitter. So today, am I going to hold him accountable for being against Trump from day one? No, I'm not. And again, it is not about Trump. It is not about the person of Trump. Trump is not a savior. I'm not saying that, you know, Trump is an awesome man. He's defected inside out even more than me, and I'm messed up. Okay? So it's not about the guy. It's about what this guy is trying to accomplish. What is his administration is trying to accomplish. And this is what we need to sell as well when we are trying to get people to vote in this upcoming election. This is not a regular election. And I said earlier, and I'm going to say it again, we always repeat, this is the most important election in our lifetime. This is not an election. This is a dividing day between America that continued to be what it was and what is today to America that they wanted to change it to be a completely different country. So it is a very serious one. And, you know, make no mistake, the fake Republicans, which is the American Enterprise Institute, the Islamic movement are fighting very, very hard. The Democratic Party, the Socialists, all of them are doing their best to stop this administration from succeeding from day one until the day of the election and afterwards. And they are doing everything they can. They throw conspiracies, they throw fake impeachments and everything else. And at the same time, they are trying their best to get people to go for the election and voting. Do you know that they increased the number of people to vote for the Democrats by 17%? They were able to get people who did not vote before ever and let them sign up and to give them, make a promise that they will vote in the upcoming election. And they are targeting the people who are ignorant, people who are not very well versed, not understanding things, whether it was life, whatever it is, in the hope that they will reach out to them, let them, sign up and let them register and vote because they're hoping that they will vote for Biden. This is how they are working hard to do it. They're also doing their best to working with companies. Many companies announced already that they give the day of the election off. They're going to give incentives for people to go. They're going to provide free transportation for people who are working at big companies to go and vote. Have you ever heard anything like this before? This is not a regular election. This is a day that will decide America to stay the way it is, as the founding father envisioned it, or it's going to be a different country that Obama wanted to be. And you have to understand the significance of that. And for us, and what we need to do today is we need to do our best to make that day a success and victory. Deep in my heart, I know that we're going to win. But we have to do our part because I believe in God. I believe God will save this country. I really do. But we have to do our part. And our part is this, you know, I know Trump is a very hard sell. I do, you know, we have to admit that. But I think when you're talking to somebody or a friend or so, you can figure out what is the thing that they believe in. What is the things that they, you know, if somebody is in small business or an entrepreneur, you can tell them, you know, do you really want to choose the guy who cannot finish a sentence with a guy that says weird sentences? It's not about the two. It's about what is good for you. If somebody is a pro-life, you need to talk to them about pro-life. The vote issues, not a person. And when you find somebody who's aligning with all the things that you believe in, then you vote for that. And it's a very easy choice at that point in time. You know, it's very easy. The person, and this is what the left and the enemies always do, destroy the character. And I think they did a very good job to destroy the character of Trump, and Trump did it for himself too. You know, he's helping them big time as well. So let's admit that. So forget about the name. Let's focus on the agenda and the movement and the administration, what they're trying to accomplish. Can you have another question if you have?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We were talking about the groups who identify the American Enterprise Institute, made many observations, some of the audits made good observations about people I didn't know were associated.
Oh, there is lots of them.
The question earlier, a question right here, identifying these big groups. What about the Bilderberg group?
What is that?
The Bilderberg group.
The Bilderberg, I don't know anything about it.
Okay. I know a little bit. They are a worldwide group of people that are very, very rich,
But can you? I think your mic is not on, right? I don't know them much, but I want to share a couple of things before I take the second question about that. Okay, I don't know the group that you're talking about. But here is another thing about John Bolton. You remember in 2012 when Mitt Romney was debating with Obama? Do you remember that stuff? You remember the first debate, and you remember the big things that was happening at that time, the Benghazi and so forth. And you know that Mitt Romney has the ability at that time to kind of pin Obama on Benghazi and so forth. And Mitt Romney decided not to do. Do you remember that? Yeah. Right? Very well. Anybody remember that or not? Yeah. Who was the national security advisor for Mitt Romney? John Bolton. Yeah. So John Bolton actually is the one who advised Mitt Romney not to go after Obama for that stuff. And Mitt Romney is a huge big name in the American Enterprise Institute as well. And I would love you actually today to go and look at the American Enterprise meeting in March 2016 and look at the list of the names, because Huffington Post and other places name them. Okay, and you look at the agenda, and I will try to make a copy of the agenda of the meetings for the 3 days meetings, closed meetings in a hotel. People are not supposed to leave, and you can see what they are trying to accomplish that day. Do you think they have a change of heart all of a sudden, and all of a sudden they were supporting Trump because he won the election? No, they're not. And everything happening today is destroying them as well. Okay. American Enterprise, it's AE, American Enterprise, World Forum Program, American Enterprise Institute of March 2016. It was from March 3 to March 6, 2016.
Dr. Mark, I've been listening to Steve Bannon.
Yes.
He talked about the other night about what you just said. The only perfect instrument is Jesus Christ.
Oh, I'm into that.
Yeah, and you just said that. You're an imperfect instrument. He said Trump is an perfect instrument. So are you, so am I. But we are God's hands and
Yes.
feet.
And you know,
and that's what we have to remember. Trump he's not claiming to be perfect, but he is trying to do.
well, if you ask him, he would say I'm perfect, but
yeah.
but this is not the point, okay? The point is this. You are talking about people who, you know, it's not that far away when we have an agenda of Obama and Hillary Clinton and what they're trying to accomplish and changing America and radically changing America and all that kind of stuff. And I talked about that, you know, a month ago, I guess, about what he's trying to look and envision and so forth. This is the country that you want to have? if this is what you want to look for, if this is where your kids wants to grow, Trump, as defective as he is pushing an agenda of the people. And this is what we need to vote for the people, not for Trump, for the people. And you make your own choices based on that. Any more questions? Go ahead.
This list of people that this person found includes some historical figures, some surprising, Robert Bork, Jean Kirkpatrick, Antonin Scalia, but there are a couple of figures that are still around, still influential, that might bear some discussion. One of them, Dinesh D'Souza.
Yes, he was on it, yes.
The other one, Newt Gingrich.
Yes, that's true. So Newt Gingrich and D'Souza was on it. Again, you have to remember this when I said earlier. This was the platform for the Republicans. This was the platform for anybody who claimed to be conservative and so forth. Many people worked with them. Really, for years, this is where to go. This is the go place. The Council of National Policy was on the side, and yes, was an amazing platform and so forth. But if anybody wants to elect it as a Republican, they have to get the blessings from them. Most of the funding comes from, so you can understand where the funding is coming from to the American Enterprise Institute. Where do you think the funding is coming from? And I'm talking about millions and millions of dollars. Who is funding this group? Away from donations, small donations, and people has to pay to be part of this club and so forth. Where is the major amount of money coming from? Guess. Huh? Absolutely, the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers are the main funding. They put hundreds of millions of dollars in this. So anybody wants to find a platform on the conservative and so forth, they have to go there. But this is why they were exposed in 2016, because until then it was Bolton a hawk, Bush is the best conservative you ever have. Those are the Mitt Romney can be running and get elected and all of that stuff, right? The exposure that took place in 2016, they start running naked because all of a sudden it became clear that their agenda is completely fake and hollow. And one of the things that showed that very well is when Trump talked about the pro-life. And all of a sudden he says, if it is illegal, it is illegal. And everybody gasped. What do you mean by that? Before it was rhetoric. We will talk about pro-life. Are we going to put doctors in jail? Are we going to hold people accountable for doing it? And all of a sudden Trump says well, I know if it's something illegal, then they have to be prosecuted. You remember that? And even those fake Republicans go crazy. What are you talking about? I'm going to put doctors in jail for doing abortion? Well, if it is illegal, what do you do with that? So is it going to be fake illegal? This is what exposed them and many other things as well. And D'Souza and others announced. Newt Gingrich did not like Trump in the very beginning. Many of them were thinking, no, it's not going to work. And again, it's not about Trump. His agenda was real. I am going to support the pro-life, then I'm going to support the pro-life. I'm going to fix immigration. I'm going to fix immigration. For them, let's say that stuff as a puppets, convince everybody in the room that I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to be elected because all of you cheer with me, feeling you feel healthy and feel good, and feeling that I'm supporting you, and then go away and do nothing. That's what they were doing before. Now all of a sudden, there's a guy says, I'm going to do this and actually do it, and that's exposed them. Make sense? Any more questions?
One point that I think you're making, and I'd like to ask about it.
Okay.
It appears that there isn't a cookbook. There isn't just a list that you can identify.
No.
You have to pay attention to current events, what all these people are saying.
Yes.
What's actually happening? What are they doing?
Here is how to identify. If you look at my background, if you judge by where I'm coming from Egypt. My dad and my uncle is Muslim Brotherhood. My great father is one of the founders of the organization of Muslim Brotherhood. I was Islamic to the core. If you decide by that stuff, you should not listen to me. But I did have a change of heart, and I'm explaining it. I'm writing a book about it to show that I am not the person that I was, but I am the person that is today. And this is how we can judge people. And I'm open to any questions from you. If you're going to say, how can we believe you if you're coming from that background? I'm open for that question. But if I'm going to say, I'm going to mad at you because you asked me that question, then I'm fake. Then I'm a liar. Then I'm deceiving you. And this is what happens. You know, if I have John Bolton actually, and he went to the meeting in March and he wants to get Trump out, and then he have a change of heart, and he saw all of a sudden that Trump is real and he's doing the things that he believes in, and he have a change of heart like Elon Musk did, and Newt Gingrich did, and D'Souza did, then I would believe them. But if they never had this kind of epiphany, like Obama was a Muslim and he became a Christian without any kind of a moment of conversion, how do I believe that? It makes sense? So we have to look at the deal altogether and look at the track record, where people coming from, what happened to them recently, and where they are talking about today. Are they lying or deception, and they are trying to fake things, or they are real? That's what I would say. Any more questions? I think I'll end with this. I have to end because it's 7 o'clock and we can discuss that. What time are we over? It's over, right? Okay, so thank you very much online. Thank you for all coming today. I did not want to make you feel bad. I want actually to encourage you even with the worst of information. Why? Because our hope is in Jesus Christ. This country is going to be saved by God, not by Trump, not by anything. You know, I heard lots of information recently that makes me so mad and so angry and so upset and so discouraged. But I always remember one thing. When things go so bad, God is not making things worse and destroying me. God is telling me, get on your knees because I am going to be victorious for you. You cannot do it in your own. And I find myself a sinner of thinking that I will make a difference. We are not going to make a difference. God will. He wants us to pray and wants us to act. He said that accept him and then go make disciples of nations. It is action. So we have to pray, we have to depend on him, and then we have to take action. Thank you very much. I'll see you next month.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. For those in the audience here and in dialing in, hopefully they haven't gone away yet, please subscribe to our newsletter. Go to globalfaith.org, sign up there, and while you're there, you can check out the 330 Club. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll have to go to globalfaith.org to find out. Thank you.
Thank you.